Hi guys, I'm going to be starting a big project here in Premium Coach, and I'm not sure I can do it. I'm a little concerned about the entire process. Try to give you an update of where we're at. It's going to be on this Country Coach bus conversion. It's a 2007, and Country Coach did something weird on these. Unlike a lot of these bus conversions that use these 4,000 watt inverters and use two of them to power up these buses. There you go, there's your standard bus conversion connection or inverters, dual 4,000 watt trace or Xantrax inverters. Country Coach had Dimensions inverters, build them an 8,000 watt inverter. It was a one of just strictly for Country Coach. So its input is 240 because this is split phase 110 and it's 24 volt battery setup. Unfortunately, this inverter died. Somehow it got damaged. I suspect somebody hooked up the batteries wrong, reverse polarity. That usually knocks out these inverters. But the bad news is this. Dimensions Magnum doesn't make this anymore. They don't support it and nobody wants to fix it. So now I'm stuck trying to make something work. So it goes right in here in this bay. I have a confined area to work with, and to make things even more difficult, this is the power coming in. Like I said, it's the main. It goes straight from transfer switch to here, back out of the transfer switch up to the distribution box inside. So it is all 240, and here's the battery cables right there for 24 volt. You can kind of see the disconnects and fuses there. Of course, the battery's down below. I know I might complain about it a lot, but parts have been very, very difficult to find lately, even 2 years into this whole situation. And though we had two 24 volt Magnums lined up, they're not available anymore. Nobody had them in stock for a few more months. So we had to come up with a different plan. The first part is, a smart person could fix this one. But it does have some proprietary controls in it. I don't know what's going on with it. Look at that, great big huge transformer. Whew. They did put some pretty good transfer relays in this thing though. Those are really heavy duty, those are nice. Makes sense, if it's an 8,000 watt, you'll need something like that. Not the tiny ones. See a lot of burn marks. It's almost like all of those boards right there have been burnt. Maybe that's why they didn't want to repair it. Now I may not have pointed it out much, but these relays right here, these are what you commonly find in a transfer switch on a short cord to generator. And so when I tell people not to have ACs or big loads running, there's contacts, if you can see right there, that have to either engage one side or the other side. And if you try to run a lot of amperage through them, so as they're connecting, they burn up. So you can see this one's got some scarring on it. So this is what we came up with. We have two Victron Quattro 5,000 watt inverters. So we have 10,000 watts total, one inverter per line. I wouldn't say it's completely outside my comfort zone, but it's definitely on the border of my comfort zone because I'll have to rewire a lot of things and make sure I have enough room to cram these two big inverters and all the connections for it in that small compartment right there. I'm not quite sure what I'm gonna do, so this won't be a how-to. I'll try to explain everything that's going on, but this is gonna be a big job, guys. Let me open this up and see what our plan's gonna be, because I got a lot of rewiring to do. Okay, so to say I'm intimidated would be a little bit of an understatement now, because I have to program these inverters too. So that's why I needed that module to connect to a computer. So they are used on RVs, just not commonly. Hopefully it's a lot smaller out of the box than it is in the box. I guess first things first, let's see if these things fit. All right, well here we go. Victron Quattro, 24 volt, 5,000 watt, 120 amp, or 13 inches, 17 inches, I call it 18 inches, by 10 inches. All right, so we got 18 inches deep, Oh yeah, we got room there. We have 10 inches high. Definitely got it room there. Now let's see how much room we have. 13 inches wide, I think. 26. That's gonna be close. Try to figure this out. You know, bus conversions like to do everything weird too. So here are the main breaker panel. Let's go ahead and turn everything off. Any more buttons to push? No. Ugh. All the connections are going to be under here, so I got to be able to route the wires this way. So let me take this apart and see where we can route it. All right, well, there you go. Battery connections, line in, line in 2, line in, AC out 2. Okay, we're gonna have to figure this out somehow. We'll figure it out. I think Morton's on the move. YouTubers, they did, that guy, he did a Victron installation. Did a pretty good one using Tesla battery pack. So if you want better information, I would probably go to him. I'll probably go watch his videos too. Check him out. I'll put a thingy wherever that thingy is. Oh, don't run you over. Don't run me over. So I'm a maintenance guy, so my priorities are obviously that it works. Is obviously that it works, but secondly that I can get back to it and fix it if I need to fix it again, unlike all the other engineers that just cram things where they shouldn't be and make it difficult to work on. So my first stage before I do any sort of wiring or layout is just going to make sure I have a place for this stuff to fit, and then I'll start building the electrical from that point. All right, here we go. We're mocked up now, so both of them will fit in there. That's the good news. The bad news is that these supports that are welded in there are off center. I still want to have these things be able to pull out, so somebody, including me, has to service them. They're not hitting their head trying to get to the connections way back there. It's still not a bad section to get to, so I may not make that a priority. I haven't decided yet, but at least they do fit. That's the first thing we had to figure out. All right, now I just have to make a plan on how to mount these things. Okay, so here's kind of what I came up with. You have to excuse the crudeness of my drawing. So I'll get 2 C channels, and I'll have a center support right there. That'll be 2 inches and whatever the height of the C channel is that I get. There'll be a plate steel that'll bridge the gap of it all, and then should be good enough to cantilever over the edge right there. So with that, I should have a tray that I can pull out. The inverters themselves, they use this bracket on the front that goes under the front for it to hook onto, and a few mounting bolts in the back. So then the chassis of the inverters will act as a pretty solid bracing to keep the plate steel from bowing, especially over that cantilever. Then that center support will be mounted to the plate, and it'll pull in and out with the tray anyways. And then that center support, I'll be able to through bolt right here to keep the whole thing from pulling out. That is my plan. I'll also have to change these wires from this really not flexible wiring. So a lot more flexible wiring so that I can pull those inverters in and out. Of course, these battery cables are gonna have to be downgraded to 4/0 for each one. But first things first, let me get some pliers to build this. All right. Now I went with aluminum because it was gonna be easier on the C channel. So that slides in there just fine. That slides in there just fine. Right about there, there's stops on it, and then that'll go right about there. And I think that should be pretty even. Rather than plate steel, aluminum should be a lot lighter. Right. So obviously with the wires out of the way, that'll be a little bit better. Okay, so I think that will work, which is perfect because I was going to put a little piece of plastic under here so it slides to act as a guide for it. So I think this should be plenty sturdy enough. I'll bolt it right there so it can't pull out, and then I'll put a stop on the back so you can't pull it off and the whole thing fall out. Difficult being a genius like me. Let's see if it works. I had this little piece of plastic left over. This is gonna be a perfect nylon guide for me. All right, that should work out perfectly, right? Oh man, that's like perfect. Nice. You know, the good news is that aluminum's a lot easier to drill than steel. Alright, well this is what I came up with so far, at least for the tray, for these things to fit on. So that C-channel I kind of drew out, fits into the slot that the old inverter base would have slid into. And you can see it on both sides, so it slides out, and then the center support is a lot of strength to the whole thing, and that's what that nylon guide's there for. I put a stop with a little bolt right there to keep it from pulling out too far when you go to service it, and the inverter's falling out and breaking. So now I should just be able to push it back right there. That's how it normally would look, and there'll be a bolt that just bolts right there to keep it from sliding out. So I'm pretty pleased. The aluminum's a lot lighter to work with, easier to drill. Might be a decent heat sink too. But now the real work starts, wiring this thing up. I also made a lot of aluminum shavings here. I gotta clean up my work. Alright, there's one of many cable ends to put on. I do my best to try to make it look okay. Really, the last big thing I have to do is connect the 110 wires up, and I needed some insulated connector blocks because I have to connect one of these to two of these. And wire nuts weren't going to do it. Well, I tried to cheat the system, use the 110 breaker out of that old inverter, but it's probably overheated too many times. The plastic finally broke. But I did find a very similar breaker off of Onan 12.5. It's a double pole, double throw, 50 amp breaker, so 100 amp breaker right here, which is what I really needed anyway, since all 50 amps is going through the inverters and back out again. But yeah, that was very unfortunate because I was done. When I tightened up that terminal, it just snapped. And I was very gentle with it. Alright, so this is why I don't normally do Victron, because you have to program everything, but we do have battery power hooked up, and I got the controller working. Let me go ahead and go through the controller setup, and we'll figure it all out. Well, believe it or not, I did get it programmed, and now it's tested out pretty well. That was not a fun process. Victron apps that I had to download, I had to update like 3 times, and the computer kept failing. But we got it. It's all set. 180 degree split phase. Do this. Alright, I have the inverters turned on. No 110 coming in. Ignore that. We'll go inside. Now, Country Coach did a weird 110 distribution panel I haven't showed you guys yet. Alright, so right here's the distribution panel. That's the main one coming in from the breaker, or from the inverter. I should say 370 on it, on that. That's where I hooked up power to. So if I turn power on right there, that's main. Just like it says main right there. I'm going to turn on the microwave first. So right here's the breaker for the microwave. I turn that on. Alright, so the microwave turned on. We have surface light. Now this stove is actually a 220 stove. With the dual inverter setup, they did allow us to do split phase 180 at a time using the 2 inverters. So we should get 220 that way. Let's find out. Range is that one right there. This is going to scare me a little bit. All right. So I do have power there. Let me just see if I have 220 first off. So if we have 220, it would come across the main ones coming in. 240, we'll call it 240. I'm a little scared trying to do this stove, but alright, so that's the right burner. Ooh, I got heat there. I got heat there. So I think that part is good. My batteries aren't fully charged right now, but I think we've successfully proven concept. Last thing I have to do is mount the display right there. This box right there, it'll be Bluetooth Wi-Fi connectivity to the display because it's got an HDMI input to it right there. That'll get plugged into here. It has its own power supply. It says 8 to 70 volts DC, so I either have 12 volt or 24 volts back there. I'll hook up somewhere. But I think this is a successful test. The last thing I have to do is put shore power to this and see if the battery's charged, and that's the part that scares me. That's why I like to do inverter first, so that if I had the line input coming on the output side, I didn't burn the inverter up. So I know that power's coming out of the inverter correctly. Just make sure we have it going in. Now generally on inverters, you smoke the inverter if you hook up reverse polarity on the batteries, or if you put line input on the output, you'll burn them all up. And warranty doesn't cover that. Switch over to charger only mode. Right there. I'll go plug it in. There's my lockout tag out. It wasn't a very good lockout tag out, but I didn't die. Go ahead and undo this one. Alright, so there's a surge protector that has a time delay on it, so it'll take about 2 or 3 minutes before I'll get power here. But here's that breaker I put in. It's in the off position. I don't know if you guys can see right there. So before I send power over to the inverter, I'll make sure I have power up to here. Alright guys, I'm actually a little terrified right now, but I think we have power now. Alright, so I do have power ready to go. I'm sure something's wrong. Here we go. I'm going to turn on the breaker. I'm so scared. Okay. Should have power there. Mains are on. Mains are on. We got power there. I just heard something click. We seem to have power coming out. We got power coming out. We got power coming out. Power going in. Okay. Don't think I see any smoke yet. Let me check for battery voltages now. I don't know if you guys can feel my hands shaking. I'm a little terrified right now. So 28.5 has a 24 volt system, so that's a pretty good charge. 28.6. Alright, so far everything's looking right. I don't have a display inside because that wasn't first on my list to do. Let's see if we can't get some power on here. Alright, I got power on. Got lights on. And those breakers are on still. Microwave's on. Now I don't have most of the breakers turned on, so most of the Crestron system's not going to work. So none of the touchpads or anything's going to work in here. But now I have light inside to do the panel. So let me do that, and once that works out, then I can just button everything up and we're going to call this thing good. I might be shaking a little bit still. I think there's an antenna booster for the TV. We should have 12 volt right there. I'll just take this off, tap into 12 volt, and we'll get a monitor put, or the remote panel put in, and then hopefully we'll be able to see what's going on. Of course, I'm just going to be using the standard sheet ABS, standard in the RV world. I'm making a way to mount that remote panel. I've already marked this out, so this should be pretty much exactly where the holes are on the wall already. Then I just have to drill a hole for the cables to go through. Should be perfect. Alright, so this guy goes right there. And this mount will go on top of it. Right there. And I just have to drill a hole for the cables to poke out right about here. Alright, so I think that should be good. I should be able to push that on. There. Hi. Thought there was a crack in it. That would have been awful. Alright, so I haven't hooked it up yet, obviously. What I will say is the good news is the dimensions inverter was actually used a Ethernet cable already, and it was wired up the same way, so I can just use the existing cable. I don't have to rewire it at all. Alright, so with data cable hooked up, we are actually getting information now. Charging, got 26. I think we're in absorption is what I saw down below anyways. Ooh, I've never actually used one of these before. There we go, better screen now. So there's the home screen. You can see what's going on. We're charging the battery, and we got 3,300 watts of power being used because I got 2 ACs compressors running. So it's not a direct correlation as far as wattage to amperage. You have to divide that by 120 and tell you what our amperage is. It's just kind of weird. Alright, so then theoretically now if I were to turn off the ACs, unplug, we should be able to turn the inverter on. Let's find out. I don't think we want that off and that off. That kills everything else. Alright. Now that would just turn off power from the inverter. Yeah, our amperage went down quite a bit. Let's go trip that breaker. Alright, now we should have lost mains coming in, which we did. Now I have charger only, so I need to move this over to the on position. Now hopefully we should get inverter coming on now. Inverter on. Let's go inside. Definitely wish this thing was a little bit more user friendly. So we are inverting. I don't really have any loads on. Let me turn my refrigerator back on. And let me see what's going on there. So it is inverting, 17 watts. Oh, there we go. I was going to say 17 seemed pretty low for a refrigerator. Now you can see how many watts that refrigerator is using. I think we're looking pretty good. Don't know if this is solar setup. AC loads, inverting, discharging. I don't know. Go to there. Does that do anything? No. There. Well, it's a pretty slick interface. By all accounts, there's a app that you can download. It's a Bluetooth app from Victron, so you can kind of see it from your phone. The module that I installed is Bluetooth. That's why I left the password and network key standing out so people can find it in the future if they lose that. But theoretically, if you could connect this to the internet, you could actually contact Victron and they can actually look at the inverters and see what's going on remotely. So that's not a bad thing. I mean, I don't know how useful that is, but it's not a bad thing. Now, if I were to turn that breaker back on, let's go turn the breaker back on. All right, turn that breaker back on. Hopefully this thing should say mains on. There we go. Mains on and bulk charge. Bulk charging, AC input. All right. So that's at least something going on. All right, that page right there tells you what's going on right there. All right. So that was my preliminary test. Looks like everything's working correctly. Now I have to secure all the wiring. I make it a habit not to secure wiring until I've tested the system out. That way I'm not undoing a lot of work like I normally do. Chances are, basically, if I would have secured wire, I would have to rewire this thing. All right, as I put this back together, let me just point out a few things I actually didn't care for on this Victron, because these were the first ones I had installed. Even though there's good access right here, these 110 connectors are eyelet connectors. And those were hard to get the right ring terminals that would fit on there. I don't like that this big plate right here, even though it's good access. If I had to drop something, like a screwdriver, right there, or right there, we're gonna have big problems. Now granted, it's probably designed to be mounted on a wall, so you couldn't drop it into there, unlike mounted as they are right here, but Yeah, that wouldn't be a problem on any other inverter I've installed so far. Other than that, oh yeah, the other thing I didn't like was programming. Programming was miserable. Very miserable. But so far they do seem to be pretty high quality inverters. We'll see how they last. Alright, well, I think I got it all routed up, everything out of the way. So I just have to push this back. I'm not hitting anything. I won't deny. This is only really removable for servicing. Okay. Then I'll get those battery cables secured, everything else secured, including the wire on that side. Alright, with that, now the inverters can't pull out. Simple, one bolt, that's it. Alright, so it's actually done. Let me just clean up my mess. Had to do one last minute modification. This door wouldn't shut because that bar was hitting the inverter. So now we just barely clear it, and then I had to notch out that plate right there to clear the rest of it. But now it closes. I mean, ideally, I would have liked to have a bigger gap right there, but where was I going to put it? I think we can all agree there's nowhere else to put it. Let me go ahead and clean up, and we'll go through this real fast. Well, believe it or not, I'm actually done with this 10,000 watt inverter setup on the 2007 Country Coach Prevost Bus conversion. Now, we were just replacing this 8,000 watt inverter that's discontinued, obsolete, and no longer available. And so we were forced to go with two 5,000 watt inverters because Country Coach wired the entire coach up to the inverter. It's all pass through. Once it goes from here, it goes up to the board inside. Now, the Victron 5,000 watt Quattro is the first time I've installed them. You do have to get the laptop. You do have to program it. We do have to make sure it's set up for split phase, 180 degree out of phase, and then we went ahead and did there's a setting for a floating 180 phase. That way, if we plug in to 30 amp service, it'll see 30 amp and it'll turn off one of the inverters and just charge with the other one. Ideally with these bus conversions, 50 amp is what you always want. Generator is what you always want. 30 amp is an emergency situation. And with those inverters stacked together, with the 180 split phase, that gives us 220 with the inverters going. So inside right here, we did upgrade the remote panel also. It's a pretty nice remote panel. Let me just get out of here. Go to pages. And let me go ahead and focus. So now you guys can see what it's supposed to look like. Now, the module I put in is Bluetooth capable, so you can go ahead and hook up to it so you can see what's going on. I don't know if you can turn it on or off. I think you just can see what's going on it. But right now I just have it charging. I'm pretty confident that house batteries are bad. But overall, I'm pretty pleased with the way it turned out. Now, I'm pretty sure I gave you guys all the information on the inside. So I did make this thing able to pull out. You should have seen that. There's the one bolt holding it in place. Does a pretty good job holding it in place. And then on this side, this was a utility box I hacked together to make it all work. It's a little bit crude, but I did install that breaker on top right there. High-tech label on and off. So if you needed to disconnect 110 to the inverter, this is where you would go to right there. You can see I scribbled a little bit on there just so you can see what's going on. Overall, I'm pretty pleased with the way it's turned out with what we had. I don't remember if I showed you the battery fuses are right there. Cables are zip tied all together. You can pull it out even without cutting the zip ties, but if you need to, you can cut the zip ties to pull it out all the way. I barely had any room for those inverters. In fact, I had to relocate them at the last minute because I was hitting the door, which is unfortunate. Sorry, this wasn't a complete total how to install. This is a very irregular setup. And I wouldn't want anybody to follow my instructions anyways. Like I said, Morton's on the Move actually had a pretty good Victron inverter setup on there. I'll try to make a link, however that works, to them. So that was it, guys. A 2007 Country Coach Prevost bus conversion on an XL2 chassis. And we had to change out the heart of the bus. The inverter is what everything goes through. You can't do much without it. And then of course the batteries are bad. And I had to rewire the batteries a little bit more, way that made a little bit more sense. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Hope for the best. I apologize I didn't make a how-to video on this, but it was a big bill. I don't have time. I can't waste people's money making videos doing a big job like this. We did put in 6 new 8D batteries. That's at least something that went right. That is something that went right. 24 volt split phase 180 split phase 180 split phase 180 split phase 120 volt AC input. It's been a long project, that's for sure. But this thing's been running all day. I'm pretty pleased with the overall layout of it. The 400 amp fuses a piece are right there. These are going to be the ground lugs right there. And then those are the positives. So each one of those 24 volt. And this whole tray, we did see it does pull out. The good thing about it is this battery cover actually is a backup. Keeps that from sliding too if that bolt breaks. The junction box right here has been working fine. Breaker's been holding just fine.